Broadcasting from the Red Bed Plains, you are now listening to Through the Prairie Smoke.
Welcome back to Through the Prairie Smoke. I'm Tyler.
And I'm Dustin.
And we wanted to do a little bit of a free-form episode to let you know about us and maybe our influences, what got us into this subject matter.
What you packing?
Well, I'm back into autumn evening here.
Oh, yeah.
It's not evening. In fact, it's morning. We've never done this before.
No, we have not.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time we've hung out this early in the day.
Right.
So,
Are we going to like each other?
I don't know, man.
I don't know.
I went to the fridge a little bit ago to get a beverage, and I immediately reached for the beer. It's like, I'm not going to drink beer in the morning. But Dustin's here. What the heck's going on? So, no, I got a Pepsi instead.
Well, then coffee. Now we're drinking coffee.
Oh, yeah, coffee as well.
And smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I wouldn't say raining, but it's drizzling out.
Yeah.
It's really nice out, actually.
Mm-hmm. We were trying to hit the thunderstorm. I mean, the thunderstorm's in the forecast. We're going to be ready if it gets here.
Yeah.
But what are you smoking over there?
Today I got a Room 101 Johnny Tobacconaut. It's a really good Connecticut. It's one of my favorites. At times it's kind of hard to get, but the label's really cool. I've shown you this before.
Oh, yeah.
So for our listeners, it has a little astronaut on the label. I just noticed this the other day. I've smoked tons of these, and it's like one of my favorite labels. In his backpack, he has tobacco leaves. It's really cool. I just never noticed it. It's a black and gold label. So you got your pipe lit?
Yep. We're
You ready to dive in?
We're smoking over here.
Ready to bring up our childhood?
Yeah, let's talk about
Our childhood bullies?
our childhood. No, yeah, we don't have to mess with the bullies.
Oh, we're not going that deep today, huh?
No,
Okay.
not today.
I need to change gears. I'm so not prepared now.
It's more about us, not all of our deepest secrets.
Oh. Dang.
Let's talk about how long have we been friends? Since the 6th grade? 5th grade?
That's safe to say, yeah. What did Gilmore go to?
4th grade, yeah.
So it would be 4th, because I think
Okay.
it was kind of towards the end of elementary school. Yeah.
Okay. 4th grade.
Yeah.
We would have been really into Ninja Turtles at that point.
I have always been into Ninja Turtles.
No, of course, we're still into Ninja Turtles.
Oh,
but we
yeah,
were.
still.
Those are some of my memories of playing Ninja Turtles on
Oh,
the
yeah.
playground.
Big
you know.
time. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that was a long time ago.
Who was your favorite turtle?
You know this.
Donatello.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yours?
Do you know mine?
Michelangelo. No, it's Raphael.
It's Raphael.
It's Raphael. Yes, you brooding, depressed person.
Yeah, but get this. I know we're going to wrap this little turtle talk up real quick, but I want to say this because we're on the subject, is that for the most part of my later life, going into adulthood, I've always convinced myself that my favorite turtle was Michelangelo. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Always related to him.
Mm-hmm.
He was funny. You know, all this good stuff. I know a lot of people don't think I'm funny, but I'm funny. But
I agree.
But the end of last year, I realized that I was so wrong. I was up in the attic.
Mm-hmm.
I was searching for something. I can't remember what I was searching for. But I have a huge tub up there that my mom gave me when she was cleaning their house and said, "Here, these are yours. Get them out of my house."
Get this crap out of my house.
And so I had put it in my attic. And so when I went up there, it's this whole tub of all my action figures and Ninja Turtles, everything from my childhood. So I started going through it, and I start pulling out turtles and turtles and turtles.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all red. They're all Raphael. Okay? Barely any Michelangelo.
Mm-hmm.
A few Leonardos. and a few Donatellos. But the majority of all my Ninja Turtles are all Raphael.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when it dawned on me, I wasn't a Michelangelo fan. I was a Raphael fan.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got me back on track. So, yes, my favorite turtle is Raphael.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on.
This says a lot, I think, about you and how you view yourself. Because you do say you tried to convince yourself that Michelangelo is your favorite.
Well, and it wasn't really trying. It was just my mindset went there at some point.
Yeah.
I don't even know at the point that it did.
Well,
you
he's
know?
the funny guy that's the
Yeah.
center of attention, you know.
Yeah. And so, but I'm kind of glad actually that it went back. And now, yeah, when I look at myself and throughout the years and stuff, yeah, I've always had anger issues. I've always had, you know, and which of the turtles has anger issues?
I will say he is the most emotionally interesting.
Yeah.
Like he's the part that moves the story along.
Dude, he's the only turtle that's yelled out, "Damn!"
Well, this is true. Yeah. This is not a pop culture episode. We're talking about our influences.
So we started hanging out in the 4th grade.
Yeah. Okay.
Playing
yeah.
Ninja Turtles on the playground.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I don't know when we started talking about spooky stuff. Previous to that, what was it that scared you? What were you worried about when it was dark, when you were by yourself?
So I've always been drawn to ghosts. And I don't mean drawn like communicating with them or anything, but you know, I was always afraid of ghosts.
What do you mean afraid?
And so I would get the normal like chills just thinking about something being in a room with you that you can't see, but they can see you.
Sure.
And what are they going to do? I mean, are they going to throw objects off the shelf at me? Am I sitting in their favorite spot? Are they going to push me down? But when I'm a kid, you know, your imagination's really heavy.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't remember all the way back in exactly what I was thinking of.
Sure.
But your imagination takes over, and then it's you get worked up, and it gets frightening sometimes, especially in a dark room.
Oh, of course.
You know.
So what do you think about when you say ghost at this point in your life? What does that mean? What is a ghost?
So now my understanding is that it's the spirit of a person that's passed over.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that, and a lot of people believe this, but our bodies are just vessels. So when our soul passes over behind or through the veil, is, as some say, that's what I believe is on the other side. And I think energy's in the air. I don't necessarily look at it as I did as a kid, where I was thinking more of like a phantom, not in a white sheet or, you know, like that, the common cartoon ghost type deal, but just more, but in your imagination, I was probably thinking of kind of seeing it, shadowy figure, you know, something like that. But now it's just more of a energy. I look at it as more of an energy in a room. I don't really think it's, I wish I could see an apparition. That would be awesome.
Sure.
Do I go looking for it? No. But it's
come on now.
Well, you know, yeah. I mean, you kind of like walk in, you know, like, and yeah, hey, come on down them stairs, show yourself. But no, I think as a kid, I was probably more seeing apparition than I was now. So, and of course, when you're a kid, you don't understand that spirit talk. You don't understand the veil, like, or I didn't.
Sure.
It's just,
well, and nobody. I'm speaking from my experience. Nobody that I hung out with in my family would talk about that stuff. It's just like, no, we don't. We're not worried about that. You know, and I went to church every week. In fact, I went to church twice a week. I went with my grandparents, and I went with my other grandparents. And being raised Catholic, there's praying to the saints and stuff like that for intercession. So that was somehow impressed upon me. There is something beyond, and you can talk to them. So I'm sure that influenced my outlook as a child. I think My worry was monsters, and that's really, I don't know, I just worried about stuff that would get me. But I'd never had an image or a name for any of that stuff. It was just in general. And as an adult, looking back on these things, like, at my grandmother's house, I had a big wheel, and she had sidewalks almost all the way around the house, and I would just ride that big wheel, do a big circle in the driveway, and hit the sidewalk again. And it was a great time, just do that all day long. But she couldn't see us when we were in the front, and so we weren't ever supposed to go to the front, but it was fine if I rode my big wheel on the sidewalk. But somewhere, her telling me, can't go out to the front, it's dangerous out there, something might get you. She never said that, but that's probably what was in my mind.
Your imagination, yeah. And
so riding that big wheel, do a circle on the front porch to come back, and I was always sure if something was going to get me, it was going to be during that circle right there. Yeah. And so I sped out of there so fast every time. Had no idea what would get me, but something was going to.
Yeah.
There's also a basement at her house. You were in that basement several times.
Yes, yep. Good times down in the basement.
Yep. Dark down there. And as a kid, the light switch for the basement is down. When you hit that light switch, it's dark in there. And just, if something's going to get me, it's going to be right there when I hit that switch. So I got to run up the stairs, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people have that when your back's to like a dark, which, yeah, that's, why don't you tell the listeners what was near your grandma's house?
Oh, yeah.
And what did we talk about in the basement when we were down there for movie nights?
Well, the cemetery's right across the street. And it's the big cemetery.
Yeah.
Cemetery Road over there. So, yeah, of course we'd go down there and watch scary movies and talk about ghosts. And we're underground, you know, and all those bodies over there are underground. How hard would it be to just get right through the wall?
I remember sitting down there, and we'd be watching movies, and every once in a while I'd just kind of go like this towards that one wall. I think it was the wall that when you're coming down the stairs, like that one, for some reason, and I don't even know if that was the direction of the cemetery. Was it? Yeah. So I'd always kind of like look back, and then your imagination's like, something scraping on the other side of that wall.
Yeah.
Good times.
Mm-hmm. So these things that scared us, I was kind of seeking them out. I was real curious, you know. I didn't have a face for what was after me or anything like that, and so I went looking for what it could be, I guess. Did you, were you seeking out media or images or anything on ghosts as a kiddo?
Well, I think for the most part, when I was younger, it was just more, you know, I was like any other kid watching the Saturday morning cartoons and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So if there was anything, it would have been like in Scooby-Doo or something that probably would have got my interest there. I don't remember being too like engrossed in trying to find something. Mm-hmm. I did have the moments where you think of monsters in your closet.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Don't laugh at me.
I may.
I can laugh at myself.
No problem.
So, it's Christmas time. Okay? I am probably, well, I'm not even going to pretend to know what age I was, but I was younger. And I don't like Christmas. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll just put it out there. Mm-hmm. Christmas isn't my thing. Mm-hmm. But I remember as a kid, though, it was kind of a thing. Santa Claus is coming down the chimney and all that good stuff. And I just, you know, all the stories about Santa Claus and the reindeer and the elves and all that. Well, one night on a Christmas Eve, I was trying to go to bed. And like any other kid, it's hard to go to bed.
Yeah.
Your parents made you go to bed early. You're sitting in your bed just looking at the ceiling, and you're like, oh man, you're just excited, you're ramped up. And so I remember just laying there in this dark room, and I heard a bell, a little jingle bell. Okay. And my parents, like, my room was we had a hallway, and at the end of the hallway was my mom's or my parents' room, and then my sister's room. So they were all towards the back of the house. My room was the first one down the hallway. And so I was closest to the living room.
And the front door.
Yeah. And so I remember that my parents had went to bed.
Mm-hmm. Allegedly.
And so it was dark in the living room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I'm just laying there and I hear this jingle bell. We didn't have any pets at that on that year.
That was going to be my next question.
So I kind of like, it's kind of one of those, you panic a little bit because you're like, wait a minute, that's a noise that happened and everybody's asleep. Mm-hmm. So I look at the edge of my bed and at the footboard,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like,
do you have a waterbed?
When you're a kid, I did have a waterbed.
Yeah.
But when you're a kid and you're looking at the footboard and you think there's something at the end of the footboard,
mm-hmm.
your footboard's like miles away from your feet.
Mm-hmm.
So I just remember looking down there and waiting, anticipation for the next ring of the jingle,
mm-hmm.
or the jingle bell. I didn't hear another jingle bell, but I swear that I saw the tip of an elf's hat run across the front of my bed and then out the door.
Awesome.
And then after that, I just remember being scared as crap.
Yeah.
Because I was like,
they got in the house.
Oh my gosh. So it's funny that a little Jolly thing that you've always known as Jolly, you don't like, I never like looked at them as anything, evil or monstrous or anything like that. But man, just that one night, like, and I still go back to that night. I'm all like, did I see an elf? There was a few years after that I thought, and I know it's just your imagination's taking over.
Yeah, of course.
And I could have sworn I heard hooves on the roof.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
So in my family, I was the oldest out of all the kiddos, cousins and all that. And so when they were young, I got to enjoy all of the Christmas stuff. And I do recall my uncle getting on the roof of my grandmother's house and dragging a hammer behind him to make it sound like hoofs and a sleigh being landing. And then, of course, Santa walks in the door, and it's, a friend of the family. Everybody smells like alcohol,
Hey, y'all.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. And, half of my cousins scream and yell and hide, and the other half is, oh, boy, we are excited, So that's fun.
Yep.
But
I didn't really mean to take us to a Christmas way, but those are related stories.
They are related stories. Yeah, it's
you said monsters.
Yes. So I was going to bring that up as well. I'm thinking about, I remember your waterbed and how cool that was, and there was no way my parents were going to let me have a waterbed.
It was a good move for your parents. Now that I'm older, so I'm like, God, these back pains. Wonder where they came from. Yeah. Oh, maybe from all that ocean riding,
But my bed, I demanded that my bed be against the wall, and because I knew something was going to get me, it was going to reach out from under the bed over and pull me down and under. And so I slept against the wall, as far away from the open side of the bed as I could get.
That's what I was going to ask you. If you had that.
Uh-huh. And when I would have been about 10, so when my mom was expecting my sister, my brother had to move in. We started sharing a room. So we got bunk beds, and I got the top bunk. But it was nice because it had railings, and I felt so safe up there. I was way off the floor. I could check real easy under the bed on my way up,
If there was one. Mm-hmm. Bye, Dane.
Yeah. Best of luck.
You're just going to feed him your younger brother.
Yeah, he'll be all right. No, they were after me.
Yeah, but still.
So, yeah, maybe a little bit anxious. And you talking about hearing a jingle bell, any noise I heard had to be whatever it was that was after me.
Yeah.
So
it's never rational.
Yeah. I listened to the radio a lot, but the voices would throw me off, and I'd hear the voices sometimes. So it had to stop being the radio. And so I got a cassette player that just sat up, ran the cord down the side, and and the cassette player just sat on one of the railings against the wall. And normally I could fall asleep by the end of side 1 of the tape.
Yeah.
But I had to have that music playing, or else I was hearing noises, and those were monsters coming to get me.
Yep. Kids don't know how lucky they are nowadays.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about flipping a tape.
Yeah, no kidding.
The monster thing just never... The only time I would ever think of a monster in my room would be in the closet.
Yeah.
And because under that ocean liner I was sleeping on, it went to the floor, and there was no under, like a normal space under the bed. Like it was a base that
nothing
just
could
went
be
straight
down
to
there.
the bed. Yeah, you couldn't do anything. Hey, I didn't lose any toys that way. I just stepped on them a lot. Man, there was something that you were saying. Oh, music. This isn't too haunting. When you were talking about listening to music when you're going to sleep, at my house, I never listened to music. I didn't have a radio or anything that I listened to when I'd go to bed. I did have a TV in my room, and so my TV could be on, but the volume would basically be all the way down. So it was really just for light and something to focus on until you fall asleep. But then there was this time that I went over to one of my friend's house, and I didn't normally sleep with a dark room. Like there's usually TV on or a lamp on or something. And I remember staying at their house, and it was pitch dark in the room. That's how they slept. No lights at all. And I remember laying on the floor, and they had a radio playing, and it was up on a dresser at the end of the room, and they had it turned down low, and it was on radio. I mean, this is before you could just hook up your iPod.
You're not streaming
or anything like that,
yeah.
you know. And I just remember it just like zoning in on that music, and because I didn't have the light to help me fall asleep like normal, and so I wasn't used to this being pitch dark. And I wasn't scared because there were other people in the room.
Yeah.
But I do remember I was having trouble sleeping, and I remember just kind of focusing in on that music. And when I did that, it felt like the room was just a dark, empty room that like grew further away from me, and the music went further away from me, and to the point where I'm just laying there, and the music that I had been focusing on is now way at the end of the room, which I guess what I would say is like being in a warehouse, an empty warehouse, and you're at one end, and at the very far end is where the music's coming from. And it was that was always like wicked to me, like, and of course I fell asleep, and that, and you know, older now, I'm older, I can be like, well, this just because you were falling into sleep, and so everything's fading. But I have not been able, and I've tried to recreate that feeling. And so I don't know, it's something like you crave something, and I crave that, and I can't reproduce it anymore. Like, it's weird.
Yeah.
I've even tried to put it like a radio at the other end of the room, and put it on like a really, really low setting to where you can faintly hear it going on, and still nothing. Yeah.
The reason why I had to move to cassette and listen to like a classical music cassette to fall asleep is because the radio, even if you're on the classical station, every now and then a guy comes on and he's talking, and the volume was low enough where all you'd hear is tsk, tsk, tsk.
Oh, yeah.
Just the S's and stuff, because it was so low, you're just hearing the harshest part of the recording.
Yeah.
That was the jarring thing, I think, for me. Anyway, did you ever try to immerse yourself in the closet to convince yourself there was nothing in there?
I got up several times when I would feel like something was in the closet, and I would jerk the doors open really fast.
So brave.
And obviously nothing would come out. Yeah. And so I'd kind of like slap at the clothes on the, on the hangers, and kind of kick some stuff on the ground a little bit, get it rustled up. But I remember doing that a few times, but I never got too wrapped up into there's a monster in my room or anything, I mean, it maybe a few times, but it was probably driven by that day watching something.
Mm-hmm.
Probably got me kind of spooked up. I know as a kid, I knew my limits, and I knew that if I watched something towards the end of the day, that was going to keep me up.
Yeah.
So tried to stay away from that stuff when I was.
So I think it would be super interesting to get the middle school library checkout records for me, because I was checking out books on the Loch Ness Monster and the Bermuda Triangle, and like I would just read those things over and over and over again. And I came across a book called True Hauntings, which was offered from Scholastic. I think I got it. The library had a copy, and I probably got a copy through a book fair, but don't know what happened to that. Anyway, I came across a copy, and I've got it around here somewhere. I just don't know what it is. But anyway, True Hauntings, and its story about kids who were haunted. And I was just consuming so much of that and reading that over and over and over again. Just so fascinated. Every spring break, Branson is a popular vacation spot for where we are in the country. And even though there are dollar stores around here, the dollar store in Branson was an awesome place to hang out for like 3 hours. I don't know why. It had to be a stop every spring break. We went to Branson, and we had to hit the dollar store at least once. But
You stayed in there 3 hours?
that's an exaggeration.
Or is it just because you're a kid and you think you're in there for 3 hours?
That's the thing. It was probably more like an hour, and there were other shops kind of along the way. So, like, the adults could wander on and go look at something different.
Okay. I was just thinking of, like, nowadays with the Dollar General, where it's out there by itself, and you go in there and you're... But it probably could take you an hour.
Yeah, this
to
was
get
the 90s.
to the back of the store and come back. Mm-hmm. Going through all those like mazes of boxes and stuff. Yeah,
and I don't think I ever considered aliens as a possibility of something that would get me until I found Bud Hopkins' Brooklyn Bridge abduction book, and I can't remember the exact title, but it was at the dollar store, and I was like, "Oh, I've got to read this book." And so, over spring break, I read this Bud Hopkins book about aliens abducting people from Brooklyn, and then was terrified of aliens.
Man. Yeah.
And it's one of those things, like, I've read so much more now as an adult. I look back on that, and it's like, Bud Hopkins was one of those fellas. Witnessed is the name of the book by Bud Hopkins. And he wrote some books, and it was pretty clear he was freaking himself out. Like, what he was finding is extremely interesting. But he was freaking out. So anyway, that's what I got to worry about.
Yeah.
And that would have been mid-90s, early 90s, mid-90s.
I didn't read a lot.
I was reading.
You read it all the time, yeah. And I never read until, in reality, I didn't read until I was out of high school. Like, I mean, I read books that were on our,
Yeah. You read
on
Romeo
our
and
list
Juliet.
that we had to,
Yeah.
I don't remember reading Romeo and Juliet. I remember watching Romeo and Juliet in class, but this was Leonardo DiCaprio, Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, well, it would have been brand new at that point.
Like, well, that was, in high school. So, love that movie, too. That movie's awesome. But, yeah, no, I read the normal books for school, like Hatchet.
Yeah.
Everybody read Hatchet.
Yeah.
Where the Red Fern Grows.
Yeah.
That's a sad book.
No more dead dogs.
Oh, man. Let me tell you, dude. That one did get me a little bit. But you know what book made me cry? And it's probably one of the only books that has made me cry.
Is it dog related?
Yes.
Stone Fox?
Stone Fox.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, man. That got to me. Like, just, if you've never read Stone Fox, you really need to read it. And I don't know if that was like one of those books like Hatchet that everybody read or what, but man, it's just...
There's a movie based on the book.
I don't want to spoil the ending because the ending's... So just check it out.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's really meaningful. It really stuck. I read that book in 3rd grade. I remember distinctly.
Yeah. Was there a movie?
Didn't
we watch a movie?
I remember... I know there's a movie, but I've never seen it. And the reason I know there's a movie is because it came in at work, and I priced it for $10, and I don't think it ever sold. It was a VHS.
I I think there was just a handful of books that I read other than the ones I just mentioned for school.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of school, I remember reading White Fang. I read Congo.
Mm.
And I remember watching Congo.
Yeah.
And that was, at the time, scary to me.
Yeah.
And I think I read
Michael
a bunch
Crichton.
of those little adventure books.
Yeah.
Where it had like 4 different endings in the
Choose your own
book.
adventure.
Choose your own adventure. Yeah. So I remember reading some of those, but just wasn't big on reading. I drew a lot and stuff. So, and comics.
Yeah.
I read newspaper comics all the time. Garfield was my favorite all time.
Yeah.
Still is. And I wanted to be Jim Davis.
Yeah.
That was my goal. My goal was to be a cartoonist.
Yeah.
And all the way through into high school.
It can still be your goal.
It can be, but I don't know.
You found your calling now.
I'm
kidding. Don't answer that question.
yes. I mean, I have. We're doing it right now.
Oh yes, absolutely.
This is the goal.
This
is the goal in my life is to reach out to you listeners and spread the gospel.
Spread the good news. What did the spiritualism? What did the spirits call their? It was the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spreading the message. But I cut you off. But speaking of books, since you were a bookworm, what was your favorite series as a kid?
Goosebumps.
I knew that. I'm just setting it up.
I know you. Yeah, I appreciate you setting that up. It's a good segue. Yes, I was in the Goosebumps fan club. I had merchandise, but I read those books over and over. And I can't remember if I read them in order. Man, Welcome to Dead House, the first book in that series. It's so good.
What is it again? I'm sorry.
Welcome to Dead House.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is that the one with the hand on the front?
No, that is Monster Blood.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not.
I don't know why that covers the one that I remember the most. It was kind of iconic, wasn't it?
It is iconic, yeah. Welcome to Dead House is pink, and it's just got a big house on the front. This family moves into it, and everything's real weird. There's a twist ending. It's so good. I didn't see it coming. I'd never read anything like it. It was just exciting, and I had to read all the rest. So all of these crazy ideas that I had probably came from the bits and pieces that really stuck out in that book.
That's it. Yeah.
So our producer's showing us this cover here. Stay out of the basement.
Is the one with the hand.
Is the one with the hand.
Door.
Like a Swamp Thing hand opening the basement door.
I remember that cover, and I remember obviously the dummy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just never was big into those, but I do remember you being a heavy fan of that book series.
I've still got a button in my car.
I remember coming to your house, and you had stacks of them in your bedroom, and I remember that was the first thing. We'd walk in your room, you'd be all like trying to
Get you to read.
push that stuff to me, like, and I was like, I'd go home and I'd tell my mom, like, man, I love Tyler and all, but he's my best friend, and I love going to his house, but man, this kid, he's always pushing this shit, And that's exactly how I said it.
I'm sure it is.
I told my mom, I said, he's pushing this shit.
First,
I don't know. He has a
first
trench
hits
coat
on
on.
three.
He always opens it up. There's like 20 books on one side, 20 on the other. He's trying to sell me the latest and greatest.
Goosebumps was extremely influential on my life. And being in a small town, there's no bookstore. So anytime we'd go to a mall or something, I'm trying to hit the Walden Books. And we had gone to Enid for something and went into the bookstore, and my dad bought me 2 or 3 Goosebump books. By the time we got home, it was maybe an hour and 15 minutes, how long it would take. I had read one of them, and I told my dad, and he was like, well, you need to be reading bigger books then.
Yeah.
And I think it had something to do with, like, I'm not going to pay for those books if you read them so fast.
Yeah.
To get more bang for your buck. So I went directly from reading. I remember the next time we went, we asked the salesperson, he's really into Goosebump books, but he's a high-level reader. What should he read next? And
Stephen King.
Yes, of course. That's what the bookseller recommended.
Serious?
Yes.
Oh, I was just kidding.
So I went from Goosebumps to Pet Sematary.
Oh. Oh my gosh. What a jump.
And that is the first time where I fell into a book like that. The world of that book became my reality as well. I think youngest cousin on my mom's side had just been born, and the cat that my aunt and uncle had to go and live with my grandparents. And I always stayed at my grandparents on the weekend, and I kept calling that cat Church. It was just in my mind like that was the cat's name, because I just fell into that world.
Yeah.
And that's why I like books so much, I think, is I can just go into them. And that's one of those things like Pet Sematary. Yes, it's iconic. Yes, it's a great book, but it's also one of those books where it's like Stephen King probably just ingested a substance and then wrote that, just started and then finished it in one sitting, you know?
Yeah.
It's a wild ride. And of course, as an 11 or 12-year-old, when I first read it, I did not get a lot of the adult stuff that was in it, especially the sex, obviously. Yeah, I think of Goosebumps fondly. Read Cujo.
Yeah.
I work in a bookstore, but I haven't read a lot of Stephen King. It's not really my thing. I enjoy some of it.
If it's not your thing, it's not your thing.
But
I have a lot of Stephen King books.
yeah,
I do like his writing.
I've tried to read it like 8 times.
Oh yeah, I haven't made it through that book.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about the way it's written where my mind wanders. Doesn't matter. Also, Scary Stories, that Alvin Schwartz book that's full of Stephen Gamel's graphite drawings.
Yeah, I remember seeing that book and how cool the art was, because obviously I was just more into art.
Yep.
Throughout school. But
So this might be ridiculous, but we're recording this on September 22nd.
okay.
And this is the start of Banned Books Awareness Week. And that book,
okay, yeah.
Scary Stories, is often a challenged book because of the illustrations. The stories themselves are kind of goofy, but the illustrations are terrifying. So if you're looking for that book, Scary Stories by Alvin Schwartz, then you want to get the one with Stephen Gamel's illustrations, because they've re-released it to get around the book, the
you don't want that
illustration.
one.
You don't want that one.
I don't want that one. You want
I mean, that art is fine as well, but you want the scary one.
Yeah. Did you watch that movie?
I did, and I think they
Is
did
it
a good. I'm not gonna recommend the movie.
Oh, okay.
If you liked that book, they are very faithful to recreating the monsters. But when you're putting a story together like that, you've got to do that continuous factor, and really those stories are standalone. And Harold,
They were trying to mash it up.
yeah.
Is that like what happened with Goosebumps too, or did you like Goosebumps?
Goosebumps was more fun.
Do you think it touched, from what you remember of those books, do you think it touched your imagination when you were reading those books, or is it too kooky?
So when I read the first books, they were good and scary. But after maybe the first 12, they start to get a little more goofy, which I like as well.
Did they get repetitive ever?
That's one of those things, and I see people buy romance books over and over and over. I'm like, isn't this just the same story? And then I remind myself, I read like 130 Goosebump
They
books.
just changed the names and
Right, yeah.
yeah.
It makes me think there's a cartoon that's famous for doing a lot of cutaways, and one of those cutaways features Stephen King sitting in his publisher's office, and the publisher is like, "What do you got for me?" And Stephen King looks around the room, and he picks up the lamp on the desk and says, "It's a story about a terrifying lamp monster." Ooh. And he sets the thing down, and the publisher doesn't really move. He just kind of looks up and says, "How much do you want?" So I think about that often when, not to say Stephen King is not great. He's very popular. Some people really like that. We're going to have to cut all this. I can't badmouth Stephen King. It feels bad.
Well, you're not bad-mouthing him, but I am glad you brought him up. I do have a quick little thing. You were really heavy in books.
Mm-hmm.
I was heavy into TV shows and movies.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say anything about my parents, but they started letting me watch horror movies at a very young age.
Your house was the best house to hang out for movies.
Yeah. And so I really can't remember the very first horror movie I've ever seen. It's way back.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say it was Halloween. but I'm really drawn to Halloween. So I'm wondering if that was the first one, but I can't remember. But I do know that on my list of top movies, of scary movies anyways, is Pet Sematary is up there. And the reason is there's a certain scene in that movie where they're in Judd's house, and it's more of a dream sequence where the house is very dark. Do you remember that scene? It's just really dark. There's stuff in the house is kind of rotting, and then you're going up the stairs, and it's beautifully shot.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they did really good. But that whole scene is what scared me the most.
Yeah.
It wasn't Gage. It wasn't Church. You know, it wasn't the... I can't remember the bicyclist's name.
Yeah.
But it wasn't that stuff. It wasn't the gory stuff.
Yeah.
The whole movie's eerie.
Yeah.
I mean, it got
atmosphere.
me. Yes, the atmosphere. And I love atmosphere.
Yeah.
If you know me, I'm atmosphere. But
We will have to talk about the haunted houses we've been involved with.
Yeah, we will, yeah. That movie, or that movie scene, before I'd seen that movie, I had similar dream sequences. And so the minute I saw that scene of that movie the first time watching it, it brought that fear back. And I couldn't believe that I was seeing it on film, but also something I've already seen. And so it was just a cool experience.
Yeah.
Now that I look back at it, but at the time, that's why that movie, it stands so high on my list. Is it will always be a part of me, because that scene,
so influential,
just like it got me emotionally, like fear wise.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, but cool little Stephen King story there.
Yep. Also, talking about Goosebumps getting goofy, a movie I watched over and over and over again. It's a Disney World of Color movie, and it was before there was a Disney Channel, early 80s. A movie called Mr. Boogedy, and then the sequel, Mr. Boogedy's Bride, or Bride of Boogedy, or something like that. My parents taped that off of the television, and I watched it over and over and over again. And when the tape copy broke, I took the cassette apart and put tape around it and then fixed it. And I thought the next time I play that is so I can digitally capture it somehow. And so in college, I bought a computer to digitally transfer that movie, just because I love that movie so much. And now you can stream it on Disney Plus, and you can, you know. But
well, no one saw that coming. So
no.
Well, some people did, but not us.
And if you got on eBay and tried to look for it, it was all just somebody recorded it off the TV. It just did not exist in a distributable form. But anyway, the story, which I just found out recently, it was supposed to be a Cheech and Chong movie. A Cheech and Chong haunted house movie, but it didn't work out. So the story, as the Disney Channel eventually released it, is this fellow who owns a novelty store, gag gifts and stuff like that. He and his family move into a haunted house in New England, and it's a haunted house, haunted by, it's actually kind of dark. The bad guy sold his soul for a magic cloak to get whatever he wanted, and became this ghost. Didn't really know how to wield the magic properly and caused this catastrophe. So that's why the house is haunted, this evil business. And I don't know, I'm sure that had a heavy effect on, you know, evil being these bad things. That's what evil is. Can't really define it, but anyway, highly recommend Mr. Boogedy. I've only made my spouse watch it like 4 times.
She hated it.
She thinks it's ridiculous, and it is. I mean, it is absurd, and it is literally one of my favorite movies. Both of them. Just watch them one right after the other. They're real short.
Yeah.
One of the fellows who was in the It miniseries that had Tim Curry as Pennywise, he's the dad in it. One of the adult kids. Gomez, the fellow who plays Gomez Adams
in the black and
as
white
well.
TV show. We're not talking about the Hollywood movie on TV.
On TV,
Black
the
and white.
original TV.
Do you know
show.
that whole set was pink?
No.
Have you seen that?
No, had no
that
idea.
whole set, because it was black and white, obviously, but that whole set was pink. The furniture was pink. The curtains were pink.
That's hilarious.
You know it. Oh man, I think there is a photo out there. I try not to think of that when I watch it now, because you know I don't want to think of it.
Yeah, don't
like
spoil
that,
the magic.
But, you know, yeah.
It probably popped real good for your black and white stuff.
Probably just killed it for everybody.
So, being into books, comic books, did you saw the first Hellboy movie in theaters, didn't you?
Yeah. But I didn't really know Hellboy until you introduced him to me. You've introduced me to a lot of stuff. But I was big in comic books.
Yeah.
Like throughout my younger years. Especially Batman. Batman's always been my favorite.
Yeah.
But it was because it was dark.
Yeah.
He's like really one of the darker characters. But I was a huge Marvel fan.
Yeah.
Up until I got older, and then it flip-flopped, and today I'm more of a DC fan.
Yeah.
But that's just because I feel like they flip-flopped. I feel like back in the day, like Marvel, my biggest thing was X-Men. I think that was, like, I was so engrossed in X-Men, so that was cool. But I think over the years, Marvel kind of flipped, especially for me, and DC is darker. Their movies are darker, more serious tone to them. Now, and not to knock everybody's love, but
Sure.
Marvel is just kind of a joke to me. I mean, it's too much.
It's harsh
like,
words.
They went too far.
Yeah.
Like, you need to slow down.
It's a lot of. It feels like fan service. We've lost our passion.
But it's
for-
also under a different under
Yeah.
a production that I don't care for.
Yeah.
But anyways,
businesses are
we're not here
supposed to make money.
to keep bashing things.
Yeah.
But yes, comic books. I read comic books, and then you introduced me to Hellboy, and Hellboy was really cool. I liked it.
Mhm.
Who did Hellboy?
Dark Horse.
Dark Horse. So Dark Horse was good, little independent.
Yeah.
And then so was Image Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Image Comics, I believe, had Spawn, and I liked Spawn.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I was kind of always drawn to darker things, but
Mhm.
it's also grew up with horror movies too.
Yeah.
So
We're skipping ahead a little bit. I remember the first time we had a sleepover at your house. It was 7th grade for me, and we went to the video rental store in our hometown, and we were just picking out movies.
yep,
And we stayed
The
up
good
as long
times.
as yeah,
Yeah.
stayed up as long as we could to watch these movies.
yeah.
I drank so much soda at your place, man.
See, that's what we did almost every weekend.
Yeah,
All our other friends were doing sports and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just every weekend. I looked forward to every weekend
Mhm.
because we were either at your house, my house, or Adrian's house.
Mhm.
Adrian's one of our other good friends.
yeah,
And it was really the three of us. I mean, there was a few other friends we had, but us three were pretty tight.
hmm
I mean, we had some other good close friends too that would come,
yeah,
but we watched horror movies and yes, going to cinema video. That
Yeah.
was so cool. I long for those days again.
yeah,
Where you could just walk into it's equivalent to Blockbuster for a lot of people.
Sure.
It's interesting how many people talk about their nostalgia for Blockbuster,
Mhm.
but I never had that
yeah.
because we lived in a very small town, and
Yeah.
so
The people who
obviously we didn't have that. We had a mom and pop video store,
yeah.
and
The
but it's
people
the
who
same.
had the video store also had the one screen theater in town.
And so we used to go there, and then we'd also rent video games. I remember renting NES games, and there was one NES game that I rented every time we went there. And my dad was always like, "Can't you pick something else?" And I'm all like, "No, Dad, it's this one." I spent
was
so
it?
much money on that game. And, you know, back in the day, NES games were expensive.
Yeah, of course.
And so I didn't have a lot of them. And this one game I just kept renting, and you think now that I look back at it, how many times we paid to rent that? I could have bought it like 3 times.
Yeah.
But Battletoads
Yeah,
was the best.
yeah,
Not to get too far off track, but you remember we would Friday night, and if you were staying at my house, my dad would drive us down there,
Yeah.
and we go in there, and they had a horror section, and most horror movies are rated R.
yep,
And you had to have an adult
yep,
rent it.
Yep.
Like me and you couldn't just walk in there and get it. And so we'd go straight to horror, and Dad would be over there, and he was so cool, man. He was just like,
Yeah.
he's like, whatever, get it,
Yeah.
whatever. And he wouldn't even check it. Like he wouldn't
No.
even. I don't remember him ever looking and reading the back of it or anything like that.
There was one movie where I do recall he's like, if we get this one, I get to watch it with you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we found out why.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all good. I do remember him laying back in the recliner watching it with us in the living room.
Mhm. That gal took her top off.
And then it was funny because he just got up and he left after that scene.
Yep. Yeah. saw what he needed, and then left. It was a pretty lousy story. I think it was more about her taking her top off.
I think he just wasn't into the story.
I think
it was a coincidence that he left after that scene.
Yeah, he was tired.
Yeah. But yeah, we watched a lot of horror movies.
Yeah.
A lot of crappy horror movies.
Oh, yeah.
And then we also watched some good horror movies.
Mm-hmm. I would also say, Friday the 13th, we tried to make it through all of the Friday the 13th movies in one evening, and that was before, there was probably Jason in Hell or whatever it was. I don't know if I ever saw that one, but that was probably new about that time period.
Yeah.
So I'd also like to mention the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I think those really stuck out to me because I didn't know it at the time, but I had sleep apnea. I wasn't sleeping real well. And so those images of those kids in class falling asleep and then not being like something weird happening, like that's what it feels like to have undiagnosed sleep apnea, is to just be sitting there and then wonder, am I asleep right now? And so I think that's why those movies got to me so much, especially the first two.
I liked them. I just didn't like them as much as Jason and Michael.
Yeah.
And Halloween was always my favorite.
Yeah.
Like, Jason was good too.
This is jumping ahead in the timeline. Mm-hmm. But when that first Hellboy movie came out from Guillermo del Toro, mid-2000s, that I think was the first time I had seen monsters portrayed in that kind of weird way. Mm-hmm. It was like all the monsters that were going to get me when I was a kid never had a face or anything like that. They were never anything. And the Hellboy universe is where I encountered that stuff. Like Samael the Desolate One, who's the Hound of Hell or whatever, that's killing everybody at first. He's got these bones that he can latch out of his arm and use as a weapon and all that stuff. It's just, It's so cool. And then when Rasputin is opening that portal to bring through, what's going to usher in the end of the world, that portal opens and that stage light flies through it and hits some crystallized creature in space, it looks like. Yeah. And then when Hellboy's seeing the future and there are those tentacles coming down out of the sky on that city, and I'm just like, what am I seeing? What is this? Which is, of course, how I found H.P. Lovecraft.
I was going to say, what inspired that?
When Google, back before when the internet was cool and Google worked like it was supposed to, you could be like, what are these tentacle monsters in Hellboy? And it would say, oh, well, that's probably Lovecraft related. It's like, what is Lovecraft? I've heard the name before, but it's like, isn't that romance? Why would you call yourself Lovecraft? Well, that's his name, of course. But, modern horror owes a lot to Lovecraft. His most popular probably is the Cthulhu mythos, but that is where I found Lovecraft and fell into books again. And his stuff will, at least it did with me, it'll mess with your dreams.
I didn't catch him until later on from you. Mm-hmm. And my favorite is The Shadow over Innsmouth.
Yeah.
Man, that's just my favorite. That got me when I was reading that story. It's just like it all ran in my head like a movie.
Yeah.
And why is it not a movie? That's what I want to know.
It is. It's called Dagon.
Yeah.
It is not. And that's the thing about H.P. Lovecraft, because it's happening. The monsters kind of don't have faces in his books as well. It's whatever you make them out to be.
Yeah. Yeah, but in Innsmouth, he does describe the Innsmouth people.
Fish people.
Fish people, yes.
Yeah.
But it's there's another called the Temple. Mm-hmm. Is that when they're in the submarine?
Yeah.
Yes, that's another one of my favorite. But it is, but it is a very unique story. It's a cool story. I like that story.
The last surviving German soldier on this failing submarine.
Yeah.
And what he's seeing at the portal.
Yeah, it's cool.
One of the quotes from Lovecraft is like, man's oldest emotion is fear, and the biggest fear is fear of the unknown. Lovecraft was writing, Edgar Allan Poe was writing. Mm-hmm. If you read a lot of their stories, we weren't real clear on what outer space was like.
Yeah.
Called it the ether.
Yep.
And a lot of the monsters in Lovecraft swim through the ether, the black, inky darkness of space. Poe has this story about taking a hot air balloon to the edge of space and having a cat give birth to kittens to see if the kittens can survive out there. Of course, we know now there's no way they could, but I think 2 in the story did.
You don't know that?
I don't know that. I don't go to space.
My favorite Poe story, or one of my favorite Poe story, I'm a huge Poe fan, is The Black Cat. That's like one of my favorites.
Yeah, Lovecraft was a big cat fan as well. I'm repacking my pipe here with something different, so I'm sidetracked.
Where are you going this time?
I picked up some bulk tobacco. Oh, and I should have looked this up. I'm not sure what the brand is, but it was a bulk tobacco of a holiday blend, and I love the holiday blends. This blend smells like rum.
You gonna get drunk on me?
It smells just like rum.
Have you smoked it yet?
I have not smoked
first
it.
time?
This is going to be my first time.
This is going to be interesting.
Robert Chambers, who wrote The King in Yellow, which was heavily influential for Lovecraft. He used those stories. Oh, anyway, Robert Chambers' work, that's all considered romance. So this holiday blend smells like rum, but smoking it, you can get these spiced fruit flavors.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Good flavor?
Yeah.
Good.
I always love the holiday blends. Those winter holiday blends are just so great.
Smells good.
I wanted to bring up with my dad's line of work. Sometimes I was exposed to the interiors of funeral homes. Not all funeral homes are like this, but the one in my hometown, the florist had access to the back door. So you just bring the stuff in through the back and put the stuff out.
Up that ramp.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, there's the lift over there. I remember the funeral director had some funny stuff tacked up to the wall back there, jokes and newspapers. My dad did too, bulletin board with jokes and stuff in the back of his shop. Going into the funeral home and you're in there putting plants next to the caskets and stuff like that, and I don't know, 12, 13, Usually I did not know the people, but sometimes there were people I recognized from church or something like that. I don't know. It's just what you do. You go in there and put the stuff down. That's what you're helping out. And so it was never any thought. It was never something we talked about. It was like,
so it's
just a body in there.
Do you remember first time ever, your emotion or anything?
I remember being terrified. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Those people are going to sit up. The first big death that had an impression on me probably happened in 7th grade for me. So 12 or 13. Before then, I had seen bodies before in a funeral home, and that was, I don't know, it was weird.
Yeah.
When I talked with some of my dad's coworkers about that, there was a lady who was like, I'm always worried they're going to sit up and say, that's not the color I wanted. And that helped me out. That was what are they going to do? What are they going to say? But when you're young, the possibilities are more open to what could happen, and your imagination runs away with you.
Yeah.
This smoke is real good.
It smells very good.
I've always been drawn to the weird or the other. You were talking about renting the same NES game all the time at the movie store. As a kid, I was always renting the same VHS, which was Never-Ending Story. And it was just that fantasy, that imagination, and then whatever that werewolf dog thing was that accompanied the nothing. Man, can't remember his name.
The dog dragon?
No, the luck dragon was Falcor.
Okay, yeah.
But there was a dog that accompanied the nothing. All that stuff was just so cool. Gamork.
Okay.
The dog's name is Gamork. Accompanies the nothing. I haven't read the book, but anyway, for my childhood, that's a big one. Hellboy opened up the weird monsters for me, led me to Lovecraft.
I would say mine would be Woman in Black by Susan Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have not read it, check it out. If you like ghost stories, it's really good. When I read that book the first time, it just hit. The whole story is just very beautiful to me. Being written in 1983, the style that it's written, it's my favorite time period. It's my favorite subject. It's just a really great story. Around the time I read the book, the TV movie had already been out, because I didn't read this in 83.
Of course, yeah.
The TV movie had came out, I think, on BBC. I remember watching the movie. It gave me chills. It hit home. Like, there's just that eeriness that I felt as a kid had came back.
Yeah.
In reality, the movie and the book, it's not like scary. Like, it wasn't her main goal to make it scary. And so, but that eeriness just came back. It was a good feeling. It's just, it just really touched me. They came out with the movie with Daniel Radcliffe in it, and it's a good movie. But I might be biased because I love the story.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about all three is they all three have a different ending.
Yeah.
So that's pretty neat. I really like short stories, short ghost stories.
Also those stories that are maybe not necessarily ghost stories, like the yellow wallpaper.
Oh, man. One of my faves.
Yeah. And I know
I referenced that book a lot.
Yeah. I guess let's talk about how have we used our knowledge for our creative endeavors previous to this podcast. You are a member of a board on a creative group in our hometown, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you've been a big part of it as well.
Yeah.
Not just 'cause you're not technically on the board.
Yeah.
Obviously, because you don't live in town
there
anymore.
Yeah.
But you were a part of it before me.
Yeah. Well, so there's this arts council in our hometown, and it supplies funds for creative endeavors. Sometimes it's a craft show, sometimes it's a theater production. Really popular lately has been dinner theater.
People love dinner theater.
Yeah. We typically do a murder mystery dinner theater. Kingfisher Creative has been doing that almost 15 years now. I wasn't involved with the first couple of productions, but have been involved with most since.
I think it even goes back further than that.
It probably, Kingfisher Creative hasn't.
Not Kingfish Creative,
right?
But kind of along the same path, because I used to do plays way back in the 80s.
Yep. Yeah.
Like Oklahoma was a big one, obviously,
and that was the one that kind of kicked off Kingfisher Creative. They redid Oklahoma, but the city also let us use an old armory in town to put together a haunted house, and that was extremely popular. And we had an excellent time doing that.
It went 3 seasons. And the first season, we wanted to keep it related to the arts, being that we were, I guess is what you'd say, an art group. And so I remember brainstorming. I can't remember exactly whose idea. I think it was a collaboration amongst us all that just threw in ideas, but there were several rooms. And we used the upstairs of this armory, and there was a bunch of what used to be offices and stuff. And we used those rooms, and it had a unique layout. There was 2 wings, so when you come up the stairs, you could either go right or left. And we kind of just adapted over time using the most space we could. I know the first year we only used 1 wing.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of prep work, too. The city was like, you can use this, but you've got to clean it up.
Oh, yeah.
And so we had hazmat stuff and respirators because everything, those windows had been busted out. The roof leaked. It was full of mold. So we tore out all the drywall, all the insulation, just left it a concrete shell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We put in so much work, and then so much bleach was sprayed all over everything.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, it was that was a big endeavor, but it was so worth it. The end.
So amazing,
so worth it.
Yeah, that first year it was. Was that the art school?
Yes, the art school.
Yeah.
Yep.
So with my influences with Lovecraft, I wanted to do the
Charles Dexter.
Yeah, Charles Dexter Ward.
Yep.
Yeah. And in that Lovecraft story, he would see things and get sucked into things. And we had, I can't remember what the first room. Oh, the first room was
yours.
The Miskatonic Extension Library.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quickly, the basis of our idea was that this was an art school, and so our goal was to make each individual room some form of art that was being done. So, like, one room was dedicated kind of like painting, one was photography, and so on. So you get the idea. But go ahead.
And that was the thing that anybody can throw together a haunted house and do a whole bunch of jump scares and gross stuff.
Right.
But we wanted to create that atmosphere, which is what draws us to these stories and things like that. The feeling you get with them.
And that was our goal from day one. I think that was discussed. We're going to separate ourselves from the generic haunted house.
Yep.
We weren't going to have people dressed up like Jason. We weren't going to have chainsaws.
Right. That was our goal.
Yeah.
And so I was a cultist in that first room, but we had fishing lines suspending chairs in that first room.
So cool.
We spray painted a sigil on the floor and put books all around it and a pedestal, and
there were books hanging down too.
Books
you remember
hanging
that?
and spinning.
That was so cool.
These videos of this people going through the haunted house are on YouTube. You can check them out. Search for Kingfisher Creative Haunted House, you'll find it.
Yeah.
Then there was the sculpture room, and it's interesting. We learned a lot that first year, because when you create a haunted house for atmosphere, people just walk into the room and stand there. Like, what are we doing? It's like, well, you're supposed to be unsettled and eventually move on to see the next thing. but we had to add the jump scares to encourage people to move through it. Some people, there was no problem. They're just running.
Everybody has their own emotions and way they act. And you're right. It was a big learning experience our first year, which, I mean, that's anything you go into. We did learn a lot, and we took that into the next season. And I think it just progressively got better.
Oh, yeah.
As the seasons went.
After the sculpture room, we had a cooking room as well.
A kitchen, culinary.
And the culinary arts department, and we had you were in charge of that room, and you decorated it all Victorian. You had the lamp hanging from the ceiling.
That was like one of my favorite rooms besides yours. Yours was really cool. The sculpture room, because it went from your room, then you'd walk through a door and you entered the sculpture room. And the sculpture room, we kind of set up like a maze. Mm-hmm. And then we went into photography. Mm-hmm. And
the photography room,
who is my wife now, had decorated that room, and she's a photographer, and she brought a bunch of her stuff, and that was really cool.
My spouse also, and then in that room, the photographer, the story in that room was every picture that she developed, there was something in those pictures, and she ended up clawing her eyes out.
Yes.
So there was a lot of screaming and.
I have a picture of me and Susan. With the eyes out and stuff. Oh man, it's like one of my favorites too. We'll post that on Instagram.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
Yeah. Then it just went into a bathroom and we just sprayed blood everywhere, right?
Yeah, but wasn't that the year Scott was a clown?
Oh, Scott. Yeah.
Now I know you've just heard me say just a little bit ago that we didn't want to do the typical haunted house stuff, but I know it was a clown, but it worked. And it wasn't. It's hard for me to explain that it's not the typical clown in a haunted house. Mm-hmm. So, but then we went into the kitchen.
Yep.
The culinary. Mm-hmm. And then we went into
painting.
Yes, painting.
And we had a UV light in there, and we were trying to hide stuff. And
that was so cool. Yeah.
Classical paintings.
2 rooms left.
Yeah.
The last one was like kind of it was just a dark room. You couldn't see anything.
And there was just a girl.
We had a girl in there. Yeah. That was part of the storyline, kind of the finale.
Well, and if you look up the video, it starts with like a made for TV mystery type thing. It's like, oh, here's this art school that's being opened, but all of these students went missing. You know.
Yeah, the unique that helped us stand apart from others was that we all came together and brainstormed a storyline. Now, I'm not saying other haunted houses don't do storylines. I remember spending a lot of time on the story.
Yeah.
And then we just built it around that story. Oh, spooky.
What made me glance outside is like, that lightning was close.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But the storylines were strong.
Yeah. So this 2-story building, you'd walk in, and the first floor is like a garage, big open garage door you could pull an ambulance into.
Yeah, there was like 2 garage doors or maybe even more.
And there's more on the other side, but we didn't go over there. But we had booths, artists selling stuff. Second year we had them inside, and it was kind of a carnival freak show theme. First year we had the booth set up just outside.
Yeah.
People wanted to sell spooky art or whatever it was, and that was cool.
The first year there was a little side room closet kind of storage little room, and that was downstairs with the garage.
Yep.
And we had them go in there and watch a film that set up the story for these kids missing.
Yeah.
And so someone we knew that did video production and stuff, and they made this little tape to watch.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That was the story. We laid out the story. Here's the new school. Here's all these kids disappeared, and then door swings open, and here's your tour guide
and you're going to investigate.
Yeah, you are part of the investigation. Yeah.
That's where we got the flow. That's how we flowed.
Yeah.
We got people to go through.
So, you open up your haunted house with just atmosphere and people walk in and just stand there. So it's like, well, we got to have a reason to move them along. Okay, well, it's a story that moves them along.
Yeah. We had 3 seasons. The building, really, the armory, we owe a lot to the armory just because I think that was our advantage on other haunted houses, too, was that we didn't have to build our set to be creepy. The building was already creepy because it's an old building and it's been abandoned. So the second season, we decided to change it up completely. We didn't want to be repetitive. And so we changed it into, now this may be touching a little more on generic, but we did an asylum. Mm-hmm. But like I say, our stories...
We had actors.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites. And we won't go into... because we could be here all day going into detail, but kind of the same thing. Every season we had kind of a guide that took you up. And that season was a doctor that, if I remember right, it was a really good setup.
We had that story. It was me who was the patient in this asylum.
Yes, you were Edgar.
Yeah. And Edgar was in this asylum because he was seeing things. Mm-hmm. But by the end of the tour through the asylum, you are also seeing things
through Edgar's eyes.
Yeah.
You're experiencing what he's experiencing.
So started out with, I'm going in and sitting on a couch. We're talking about, me and the guide as this doctor therapist is like, so you're still seeing things? Like, yeah, I'm seeing things,
And what was cool about that was, like, if you were the person going through, it was like you're basically just walking through, you're like, it's kind of like Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, where you're observing from where they can't see you,
right?
But you're observing from maybe the corner of the room. So, yeah.
And
it was really cool.
Some of the guests came through and would just stand there like, what are we supposed to do? And so at the end, I would have to address them like, you all should leave.
Yeah, you'd scream at them. Mm-hmm. You'd like lose it.
And so that next space was like going into that liminal in-between space of, here we are awake, but we are crossing into something else. Yeah. And that was the maze with people poking at you. Oh, Susan over here is letting me know she spooked people in the maze.
She did, yeah.
We had Scott as a clown in the maze.
I believe there was a doll that I had made for that.
Yeah.
And the doll had a big part of it as well in what you were seeing. And you were seeing... There was 2 clowns that were part of the story that you were seeing in your visions, and that was in that room. Those 2 clowns were in that room, and that was a cool room too.
Yeah,
that room always seemed to be a maze setup.
Yeah,
but it was the biggest room. The room. It was just set up for a perfect maze situation. So, but.
Ended with electroshock therapy on me, with just me screaming.
That's the room I was in. Yep, you were on a table. They walked in and you were on a table, and we were doing the shock, and so that kind of led into it. The cool thing about that, and you would see it in the video if you look it up on YouTube, is that all the characters came out of the rooms and came down that long dark hallway as our people were leaving, and that's all they would see is all these characters coming towards them, and that would push them to the exit.
Yeah.
Then third season,
big one,
was the biggest one. Tulsa Haunt Review. Every year they go around to different haunted houses throughout Oklahoma, and then they write reviews. At the end of the year, they do a people's vote for the best haunted house, or they have like top 5 or something like that. That year we came in second, and it was just like it was a big deal for us. And we even had another haunted house. They're nearby us, and they were big. And they get bigger every year, and it's one of my favorite haunted houses. Yeah. And we had become friends with the guy that operates that, and he was a lot of help to us. He gave us a lot of pointers. I just remember, because I would look up at him as like a mentor. Yeah. And I always saw them as being bigger than us because they had been going longer than us, and they had more money into their haunted house. And I always just looked at them as like we were some small little carnival haunted house, and they were like
the underdog.
They were big time.
Yeah.
And when we got second, I remember him reaching out to me and congratulating me and awesome. All that stuff, and that was a great moment. But season 3 was Freak Show. Yeah. And we like every year we had grown, and we chose to use both wings of the building this time. And it was hard. It was kind of hard to figure out a flow when you had stairs. The stairs you would go up, like I said earlier, you could either go right or left. But the exit was the stairs on the other side of those stairs that you go down, and that was the only exit out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to get creative with direction of where people would walk.
Yeah, just put a monster there.
And of course, we had a guide like we did last time. But the story behind this one was that there was a mad scientist that had escaped, and he found this abandoned warehouse where he
was making freaks.
Basically, he was experimenting with taking humans and then making them into different things. And then we had a big old swamp area that was cool.
And I feel terrible about that room because it was still flooding. Like the roof still leaked. And
this was a lot of this was reality.
Yeah, and so it was like, what people aren't going to want to walk through here and get their shoes wet. What are we going to do? And so it's like, well, this is the swamp room. We're going to hang vines from the ceiling. We're going to throw down pallets, put a walkway.
Yep.
And so we did. We put down these pallets. We built a walkway where you're going through with railings. There are these vines hanging down, and we had
chicken wire as the kind of to help the pathway.
Yep.
And it gave a swamp. It really did. Old rickety. It almost felt like an old rickety bridge you were walking across. Yeah. And then on each side of you had
there was a snake
mutated
woman,
people. Yeah.
And there was an alligator woman. And then at the end of that room there was a metal. I don't know what they used it for, but there was a metal sliding
what
thing.
that was, but it was perfect for a haunted house. I'll tell you that.
And it was the person who was throwing the chunks of meat out for these critters to eat.
Yeah.
I feel so bad because like it was full of water, it was full of mosquitoes.
Yeah, and it smelled bad too.
Awful. And those gals hung out in there.
Yeah, I'll have to give it to them.
It was amazing, and both of them. That room was just perfect, and it was
perfect. It was great. Yeah, atmosphere.
Because it was real.
Yeah.
It smelled that way because it was
music playing in there too. That was like a kind of like jungle noises and stuff. But yeah, it was. I'll give it to those two actors for sticking in there for 3 hours.
Amazing.
And then
4 weekends.
It's also to be noted that obviously this old of a building does not have air conditioning.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've never had air conditioning.
Yeah.
You kind of pass through the kitchen a little bit.
Yeah, it was some kind of like weird thing at the end that was a kitchen setup.
So all the rooms kind of led into each other. So the next room, we had a werewolf type man. We had him chained up behind some pallets, and he was chained to the wall, so he would come at you. But
you'd walk in and he'd run at you, but then he would stop because of the chain, and that was pretty cool.
The next room, there was a cage set up.
2 cages, yep.
And I think we had the Zipper Sisters in there.
When you first walk in, it's this huge cage that's in the center of the room, and it had a deformed guy, and he kind of looked like a lumberjack, but had a deformed face that looked like fabric that was buttoned and stitched together. And then we had also in the same cage was a small bird-like human.
Yeah.
There was a huge nest in there.
It was so
that they
awesome.
sat in. And against the wall, there was a cage, and it had the Zipper Sisters in it. Yeah.
And it was just a thing where like their skin was able to be they could take their skin
and
off,
you'd see the
mostly on
inside,
their face.
the muscle and everything.
And they hassled the people walking through, but then the lumberjack guy gets out with his axe, and of course we're not going to get a fake axe. We got to use a real one because we're going to embed it in the wall.
Yeah, and up on the wall there was these huge prints of like
traditional freak show. But before he gets out, they would wait for the people to exit that room. Now, that's the last room on that side of the hallway. And then they're going to... And what got us to get them over to the other wing of the building was when they started walking out of that room, this siren went off. And that siren indicated that one of them had broke out. And it happened to be the guy with the axe. And that siren would also had a practical purpose because it alerted us on the other side that the group was coming through.
Yes. And what he would do is he gets loose, and then he was like hacking at the wall with this real axe, and it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But he would chase
we had insurance
into the other side of the wing.
Going beyond that, we had the bodies hanging from the ceiling.
Yes.
And there was the butcher who was wearing a pig mask and listening to...
Oh my gosh. So and that just happened to be on the fly idea. Like that wasn't even ran by the whole group, because a lot of the ideas were all agreed upon by the creative team.
We were very specific with what we want. We didn't want to do a hell house.
Right.
We didn't want to pass any judgment on any choices people make in real life. We just wanted to do a haunted house.
And we were wanting to stick to our story. We were building our story. We did have a lot of volunteers, because all of this is volunteer work. Nobody gets paid. And we did have a lot of volunteers that came in, and what they wanted to do was their own thing. They wanted to wear Jason masks. They wanted to do their own thing, and we made it very clear that that wasn't going to happen, and if you aren't on board, that you'll have to find another haunted house to work in. For the most part, that worked. But what I mean by on the fly, he's a member of the creative team, and he had a pig face on, and he looked like a butcher, and there was like these dead bodies hanging from the ceiling.
Well,
this was what was the maze room. So, and it was almost a maze of dead bodies.
We made a whole bunch of these bodies using like milk jugs, just trash. And then we wrapped them in duct tape, and
then we'd splatter some red on them and make them look. And it worked.
Yeah,
like,
you never see faces or anything.
Yeah.
But his big jump scene is he's got a chain, and he hauls one of those bodies up through the rafter, like using the rafters.
Raises it,
and it's so spooky and creepy. And then he's got his cell phone in his pocket.
So on the fly, it turned out great. He thought it needed a little more, so he decided to put Patsy Cline on his phone, and he had it in his pocket, so you didn't really hear it until you got up close to him, and then it was just gave this weird, like, eerie. Anyways, it worked. It was a great call,
and that went right into the mechanical room.
Yeah, that's where you were.
That's where I was.
Your room was cool too.
We had all this random metal stuff, a giant fan in there that squeaked like crazy. It was just like a the whole time.
That huge shop fan that we had, and we used that fan until it like died.
Yeah,
because that fan was like our only air pushing through. In your room, I think, besides the swamp room, was probably the second constructive-wise. Like, you constructed this huge booth, glassed-off booth or something.
And we were doing the whole man and machine thing in that room. So I had a grinder that was shooting sparks, and so as not to ignite anything, we had these giant plexiglass walls that the sparks shot into.
Yep.
And I had picked up this trash off the side of the road.
You were just grinding away.
Cut it into strips, and I had an old playground out here that I cut down because it was too big for our backyard. And that became the legs of this person that I was grinding on and shooting the sparks. I mean, it was just trash and foam.
It was cool.
But it looked so cool.
It was so cool.
And I had a robot mask on and one of those, was it a Freon tank?
Yeah, we took some empty tank and made it look like, and then we ran hoses to
into my shirt, so it looked
to
like
make
that
it
was
look like you were half
just pumping
machine.
that air right into my lungs. Trying to go for a Mad Max vibe, it didn't quite work out, but
but it worked out on its own. Like it was
and then I would get out. I would come out of that booth to push people along, but to get people from running down that hallway, dude in pig mask is right there to push you into the next room, which is where you and your spouse were.
I was half person, half teddy bear. My face was a teddy bear, and then
buttons for eyes, big sharp teeth.
My wife was in a big, huge box and she was basically a human Jack-in-the-Box.
Yeah.
And she had a clown face on, I think, or whatever.
Had a knife.
And a knife. And I stood in the middle of the room, so when they walked in, I was the first. It was a dark room, completely dark, and we had this lamp that we had used all the years prior. I love this lamp. It's still hanging up there, and I still want to get up there and get it. But anyways, it had a pull chain to make it come on, and so when they would come in, I would hit that, and then it would show me in this light, and then when they came in towards me, she would jump out of the box and scare them to the next room.
Because where you were, you kind of pushed them toward the box.
Yes.
And then she gets to jump in.
We've been talking a lot, but a funny little story about that room. Going back to how people react in different ways, whether they make jokes because they're afraid, or they laugh, or some cry, some scream and run. So anyways, everybody has different emotions. Well, one night, this guy came in with two girls. They were younger, like high school age. And he kept pushing them along because they wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And so they were freaking out. And he was laughing the whole time because he thought it was funny, but I think he also thought it was funny about their reaction. When they came to my room, the girls were scared and they started running off. But the guy walked up to me and he's laughing. And he goes, I don't know why you're all scared. It's just a little teddy bear. And he put his finger up on my nose and goes, boop. And it took every ounce of me to not laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And when he left that room, I was just like, oh, dude, I was like cracking up.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, okay, so that's the funny little story.
We did have a no touching rule.
There was a no touching rule,
for insurance reasons as
but
well.
I let that one go because it was so hilarious. When they walk into the next room after us, there was a guy up on a board that his limbs were all separated.
We had access to a couple of CPR dummies.
He looked like, it's like a dissection.
Yeah.
Like when you put a frog on a table or a moth.
That's what we
or
were
something.
going for.
Yeah.
But we were adding limbs too, so it was kind of that Vitruvian Man dissection, like we had tried to add extra legs and arms.
But we had a person that would stick his head through this hole in the wood and was standing on a ladder behind it.
Yeah.
And he would stick his head through and it made it look like his head was still alive and he would scream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also had a tanning bed in there. We had an arm hanging out of it like somebody got cooked.
Yeah, and that was a pain in the ass getting up in that room.
It was, and it can stay up there. It's fine.
Yeah. The next room we had a guy that was laying on the table. It wasn't an actor or anything.
There was nothing in there.
It was
but
somebody we built to look.
Yeah.
And he had a mask that we had used for the head. And it was more of a...
You walk
I know
through,
somebody
there was a
in there, I
and
think.
stuff.
But yeah. And then they would go into the finale room, what we always called the finale room.
Yeah.
And in that room is where there was another werewolf guy that was on a chair or something
Gurney.
like that. And then there was the mad scientist.
Yeah. Who brought you up, and he wanted to create freaks out of everyone.
Yeah. And when we walked in, or when you would walk in, the werewolf would come break out of his straps, and then he would attack the scientist. And then you left while he was wrestling the scientist around this room.
But the alarm's going off, and all the creatures are meeting you in the hallway. And you
can see they're all coming down the hallway that they were in, and then they're coming towards you because they've all escaped now. And so that's how we ended. And so it was really cool. And like I said, second place in Oklahoma. Thank you very much.
What? Professionals, dude.
Yeah, I remember coming off of that one. It was the biggest year, profitable, and
I mean,
we're not profiting. It goes into
into our other productions.
And actually, like how we look at it now is just basically the haunted houses were like the engine fueled the money, and then we'd take that money and we'd do dinner theaters and plays sets and stuff. Take up money.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at least doing 2 events a year, and we still are kind of like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the haunted house came to an end, which is very sad.
We lost access to the building.
Yes, city owned the building, and then a company came in and wanted to rent it for equipment storage. And, of course, they had money, and we didn't have money. So,
yeah.
So the haunted house kind of went away, and we had to go into other things like plays and dinner theaters and art shows and stuff. For the most part, we did comedies. Because comedy, people love comedies. We had never done a drama, and we decided to dip our toes in that world.
Yeah.
And I think it went over well.
I do as well.
But I'm also biased.
Yeah, well.
But,
it was one of when I was approached about this program, it was like, what I wanted to do was build up this thing, get a whole bunch of people coming regularly. So, do the fun stuff that everybody likes, get your fan base built up, and then beat them over the head with art later,
But, small town politics, stuff like that. It's it's very delicate. And unfortunately, it does put you in a box sometimes.
Yeah.
We have a good group, and
yeah,
I think we push the boundaries when we need it. That doesn't cause too much controversy.
Yeah.
But when we dipped into this drama,
we did The Insanity of Mary Gerard by Lainey Robertson.
I had always wanted to direct one, and I had always just been acting in them. So I don't know how I came across the chance, but I looked for a script that I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted it to be something outside of what we'd always done. And funny enough, I'm big on humor and comedy, but I wanted to do something different. We're kind of limited on actors and actresses. We've struggled in that area just because we've tried to get people interested, and it's just something, a lot of people, I think, it's just they don't think they can do it, but once they get into it and realize they can do it, it's a blast.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And so
it's a lot of work too.
Yeah, it's a lot of work though, and people have jobs and kids and stuff like that, but
gets in the way of art.
And it's volunteer, so it's not like you're getting paid for it. We when I was looking for a script, I was keeping that stuff in mind. I had to find a low cast, and I didn't want to do a big set. So I came across the script, and I felt like it fit what I was looking for. I mean, you can make a set for this play. Mm-hmm. And actually, it had set directions in the script, but I didn't see it having a set. So I presented this idea to our board, and everybody was on board. I was a little nervous about that, actually. I didn't think anybody would want to tackle a drama because we'd always done comedies. I think everybody was at the point of wanting to try something new. So everybody was on board. Val and I sat down and read the script and talked about what ideas we had and how we were going to tackle it. And it's if you've never seen the play or read the script, there's many ways you can do it. So that was kind of the first hurdle, was just trying to figure out how are we going to have these actors memorize these lines, who's going to have what line. Are we going to break it up, or are we going to do sentences? I mean, there's just different ways to do this script. So
the way the script is written, you've got repeating characters, and the way this woman is essentially placed in an asylum against her will. This was common for the time. She is a free-thinking woman, and her husband is disappointed with her view of the world, so he locks her away because he has money and power to do that. So they put this woman, a sane person, they put her in this asylum, and they put her in an isolation chair, which she gets strapped down, and then there's this box that comes over her head. I think what we talked about is you could do this where all of these characters she's interacting with are in cells around her. You can build an asylum. You can make it look like a prison and have her interact with literal people.
I was really stuck on the idea of not having a set. Mm-hmm. And that was actually one of my pitches for the group, was because I can't remember what we were coming off of.
The last set I took down all by myself.
Yes.
And so I said, no set, you jerks.
And, well, it was always like, everybody's kind of gung-ho about building one, but they don't want to tear it down. Yeah. So, but the more we went along, I was like, we don't need a set. Yeah. What I envisioned was the tranquilizing chair, and that's it. Yeah. And then it would be more of a dance. Well, I mean, we didn't dance, but it's,
very flowy. Avant-garde, I would call it.
Yeah. I have always been on the atmosphere side, so I wanted it to be very heavy on the atmosphere. We're doing this in a high school, or auditorium. Used to be a high school auditorium
that was built in the 40s.
Yeah, and the stage lighting is what we have.
Yeah,
and so we played with the stage lighting, and I got it to a red glow that I wanted, but traditionally the lighting wasn't ideal for most plays. Yeah. But I was stuck on it, and I was like, no, we're going to do it. Yeah. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. Yeah. We got an actress that played Mary great, did a phenomenal job. Yeah. And then we had our
They're Furies? Referred to as Furies.
Furies, yeah. Yep. And so we had Furies, who also did an amazing job.
The way the script is written, there are periods in the sentences. The lines aren't really assigned to the actors unless it is a specific memory and they're playing that specific character. So the Furies lines, they're all supposed to say them at the same time, and it's like in Mary's head. But with the periods that are placed in there by the scriptwriter, it just made sense to me that every period, everything is said by a Fury, and it just goes down the line. And because we had this thing, it's like these Furies are aspects of Mary, and she is remembering these things. It's all a part of her, and so it would make sense that they all share this one thought,
which was a good call.
I mean,
And
I think so.
because I was really struggling with how we were going to do it, and I remember sitting there with you and Val, and you throwing that out there, and then me, you, and Val practiced it, and it just, the minute we did it was just, it was like, even Val was just like, oh, that's eerie.
I don't even know if the scriptwriter knows that's what she did. But
Yeah.
like, that's how she wrote it.
So that's what we decided to do, but now the next hurdle was presenting this to our lovely actors. And if you've ever been in a play, I don't know if it's just me, but memorizing is a big deal for some, and I was really worried on how they were going to memorize all these little
Parts of
sentences. And sometimes it was repetitive, so you didn't want to.
Is this the third time
There
I've
was
said
a lot
this,
of Mary in it, you know, her name, so that was said a lot. And so, is it said this time or is it said this time? But these actors, it was a lot of work. Typically, would you say it takes 2-3 months to prep?
Yeah.
And then we do usually 2 weekends
Yep.
of show, and probably practice 2 times,
Twice a week.
a week, and maybe 3 towards the end.
Yep.
And this one we actually didn't make our first date for some other reasons as well, but
We had some people
it
drop
was a
out.
lot of work. Yeah, we did go through some trials of this play. Plays in the past have had their hiccups as
Of
well,
course.
but this one just seemed like one after another.
Well,
was just,
and this play was a lot more work. Like,
Yeah.
it's easy to be goofy when you know you're being goofy.
Yeah.
But when you're being serious and have to bring those levels, it's exhausting.
and like I said, it was the first time our group had ever tackled a drama.
Yeah.
In the end, it was all worth it. We put a lot of work into it. We fine-tuned a lot of stuff. Sometimes I
ruined
was
some
annoying.
friendships.
Yeah, sometimes I was really annoying on what I wanted. But I think it was you that was, because you've done so many. You've directed almost every play we've done. You and Val. This was my first time, and I'm glad that you two were there because I would have been lost without it. I remember you telling me at the very beginning, hey, you stick to your guns. If you have an idea, even if it sounds crazy, you don't think it's going to work, try it.
Yeah.
You at least got to try it.
You don't know
and
until
then
you
push
try.
for it, and then also don't take outside criticism.
Yeah.
Unless it's needed.
Yeah.
You know. And I think we balanced that great. I think
so.
we took ideas from the cast that had good ideas and what they felt comfortable doing as an actor, which turned out better for the scene. And then I think we all worked as a team very well.
Yeah.
Yes, there's up and downs but when you're with people for 3-4 months, twice a week, you know, repetitive stuff, everybody has their days, and it was great.
It's all volunteer.
And then
Nobody's
it's
getting paid.
all worth it in the end.
Yeah.
And that play, I think we hit it out of the park tackling our first drama. And I was really proud of that play.
Yeah. So there you go. That's about us. That's about our creative endeavors. That's what we do. That's what we're into. Back to the subject of what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
How do we go looking for this stuff that we're into in real life? Let's talk about your wedding about this time last year.
Yeah. So in October, we got married on the 13th, which happened to be a Friday the 13th.
Not
so
you
that
and
was
me.
cool.
It was you and your wife.
Oh, wait, what?
We didn't get married.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was me and my wife, not Tyler. And yeah. No, me and my wife have always been drawn to the Crescent in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. If you haven't been there, I suggest you go.
Yeah.
So we had been there a few times. It wasn't my first time there, and it wasn't you guys' first time there either. And I knew when we started talking about getting married and where we were going to get married, of course, that was a no-brainer for us. And we decided to go down there for a few days and get married. And we did pick 13, and then it just happened to be it was Friday the 13th.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
It was perfect. Everything lined up. And we wanted it to be small, of course, Tyler and Susan, and we wanted Susan to officiate it. Obviously, you guys are my best friends, so of course you're going to be there. And then
Appreciate that.
Amber had invited her best friend, Val, which is who we direct with.
Yeah.
And her husband, and she brought her kiddos along. And Amber's mom had come to help us watch the kids and then also set up the wedding stuff.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't a big wedding, which is not what we wanted. We wanted something small. We picked a park in Eureka Springs that was just this little bitty park. It was perfect.
Beautiful.
The weather turned out perfect. Couldn't ask for everything, just lined up. It was great. And you guys stayed in... What suite did you guys stay in?
Well, we should maybe talk a little bit about the Crescent then. It was Eureka Springs had healing properties long ago for the people in that area, so it was kind of this place of healing. And this fella,
Dr. Baker.
Yeah, Dr. Baker. He had this idea for this resort that's going to be up here in the mountains, and it's going to be fresh air and treatment. And he did these radio shows and all that stuff, bringing people to this resort where these people were just dying of cancer or whatever. But he'd be like, give them some shots and get up and dance and eat this food and then go home and die.
Well, he used the Eureka Springs. He had a famous elixir that used the spring water to heal cancer.
Yeah.
And so it was, I believe it was a hotel when it was originally built.
Yeah.
And then it didn't do well.
What is it,
1886 is when the build...
1886.
Yeah, when it was built. That kind of sets up a little bit of the background of this hotel.
Yeah.
It was a hotel originally. Then it was his cancer treatment. And then it
Boarding
was
school.
a women's college.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff has happened over those years.
And there's a lot of stories, and a lot of those stories sometimes get dark, but I think this dude just thought, I mean, he was doing his best. I don't think he was out to hurt anybody. He believed he was helping people.
I disagree.
Really?
I didn't want to get too far into the story because if people go there, you'll find out all this stuff when you go on the ghost tour, which I highly recommend, because they go through the history of Dr. Baker pretty heavy, because that's kind of what their bread and butter is.
Yeah.
But the reason I disagree, though, is he was an opportunist. He was looking for money.
Businessman.
And when he knew that this elixir didn't fix anything. And they had a crematorium there. You know, he built that in there. Yes. I don't know, just from listening to the stories when I've been there, I just, maybe I'm looking at it wrong or different from you. I feel like he was a scam artist.
Sure.
And maybe you're right. Maybe he didn't expect to kill people, but he definitely was aware of their condition and how he can make money off of it. And then, I mean, people would die, and he would get rid of them without notifying the family.
Yeah, well, that's bad for business.
Still take treatment. Yeah, but he would still take payment.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm like, this guy
may be completely wrong then.
Yeah. He was shady. He was definitely shady.
So anyway, there are a lot of stories over the years at the Crescent, and there are some rooms that are more active. And we had plenty of time to plan for this, so we put a reservation in for one of the haunted rooms. Susan and I did, which was Theodora's room.
We did the suite, and it's like the only room on the first floor or ground level.
Yeah, and it's huge.
And it's huge. It used to be Dr. Baker's office. And there was living quarters in there. So it's a 2-bedroom suite, and it had like a bar at the end. Anyways, it's really cool. Since it was our wedding, it was a special occasion, and we went all out, and we booked. Well, you guys booked your room about the same time we booked our room, and that was almost a year before we were going. Yeah, because I think you do like that. That hotel is well known. So.
Yeah, and that's one of the big draws. People want to stay in those rooms. Susan and I had been previously for our 13th anniversary. We went and stayed at the Crescent. We just got whatever room was available and took the ghost tour and had a great time. It's an awesome place.
I keep telling Amber that we need to move there. I could live in Eureka Springs.
Yeah,
it's everything. It's one of my happy places.
Yeah.
I love Eureka.
Lots of shopping to do, lots of stories to tell, and that's what we're doing. We're telling stories. When Susan and I had gone for our anniversary, they had, in addition to ghost tours, they were doing these stories outside, and this was during pandemic times. So mostly everybody, I mean, in the ghost tour, you're wearing masks, but they had an outside fireside stories. Somebody's kind of in some period dress and tells these stories around this big campfire. And that was a good time, and it's too bad that wasn't going on when we were there.
I know. I wish I had, because I'd seen it. Their Facebook page, and anyways, I get run across that stuff, and they were talking about those campfire ghost stories, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I could go there, and so I'm jealous that you guys got to experience that. Yeah.
And people were coughing like crazy out there, but everything's fine.
Yeah, but weren't you guys taking the Springs elixir? And
oh yeah, absolutely. We were getting
he was fighting off COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Baker. So anyway, I guess we should talk about experiences. And look, guys, I'm a skeptic. I don't know.
I'm glad you're saying this, because I was about to say before this goes any further, my buddy Tyler is. Would you say you're a huge skeptic?
Look,
you're not a huge skeptic.
I want to believe I am a skeptic, but I'm not a cynic. So like what's most important to me is the stories and how people feel about them, how these experiences affect the people they happen to. That's what I'm most interested in.
And I'm more gullible than you.
Well,
I guess is
my thing
is a funny way of putting it.
It doesn't matter to me if it happened or not. And sometimes I like to think about things as like the literal world and then these other experiences, because like go back to Stephen King's It, nobody ever sees Pennywise the same way when he's the monster. It is based on what they see, what they are afraid of. And it's one of those things, just the progression from talking about fairies to UFO abductions, all of that stuff seems to be the same type of story. It just changes with cultural changes. So I am open to experiences happening to people, but I am not confident at all what is causing it.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
So first night, Theodora's room, and the stories that are told about Theodora is there are guests, like within the last couple of decades, who have had strange occurrences. And there's this talk about this couple who was arguing before their wedding, and they had unpacked everything, and they had gone out to dinner or something, and when they got back, their suitcases had been packed for them, and they had been shoved up against the door because of this argument they had prior to their wedding. And it was thought that Theodora was horrifically insulted that they were sharing a room before their wedding, and then also fighting about it. You all had been there for a little bit before. You got there much earlier than we did. We got in one of those luggage trolleys, and our dress clothes, we're there for a wedding, so we had dress clothes on hangers on the top, and had some dress shoes on the bottom, and then just our regular luggage. And I'm one of those guys where if I'm going to use something and I found it convenient, I'm going to make sure it's convenient for the next person. So I didn't just take the trolley up there and lock it in the room. I unloaded it rapidly and took the trolley back down. So in my mind, I dump the shoes off onto the floor, move a bag onto the those luggage things where you can keep your suitcase up off the floor. It's that folding thing. And then I hung the clothes up, just grabbed the clothes off the top and hung them in the closet. And
it's important to note that I was in the room with you.
Yep.
Because I was helping you.
The girls must have gone to Skyview or whatever. Sky
yeah,
Bar.
because we were going to go eat at the pizza bar they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, just unloading that stuff and then taking the trolley back down. And then we come up to the restaurant, and we're out on the balcony overlooking the green there and the Ozarks. And,
beautiful scenery.
And it's a little chilly. I've got a flight of beers in front of me, and somebody needs a sweater. I'm like, I got a sweater in my room, and it's just right up the stairs here. Let me go and get it.
Yeah, your room was closer, yeah.
I think I had gone by myself, and I walk into the room, and the first thing I notice is I have to step over the shoes. And the shoes were in the middle of the floor, the dress shoes, both my wife and I's. And they were heel to heel, the 2 pairs, just right in the center of the room. And I had to step over them, and I thought, that's odd. And so I go to the closet, unzip the suitcase, and I go to open it, and then I thought, I didn't have to move my clothes out of the way. And I look up, and Susan's clothes were on one side, and my clothes were on the other. There was one shirt of Susan's that was on my side, but for the rest of it, it was separated, our clothes, on opposite sides of that closet. And so I'm like, now that's real weird. And like I said, I had been drinking at this point. We're sitting up there waiting for our food. It's a bar. We're having a good time. We're partying, celebrating. And I come back down and I give you that hoodie for your kiddo to wear. Mm-hmm. And then I'm telling that story and everybody gets real excited. And I'm like, but it can't be that, right? It can't be that.
Well, when you were telling the story the whole time, I'm like going back in my mind of when we entered the room and stuff, and the shoes. I remember the shoes because the shoes fell off the trolley when you were pushing it in, and we just left them.
Yeah.
And they were not heel to heel. They fell. One was on its side. One was over here. Like, it was like, and I think the reason I remember that, like,
I think you
when
commented
did that,
on them
I was
before
like,
I left.
yeah. And so, and then I do remember you walking over to the closet with, like, you took like all of the clothes that were on hangers.
One trip.
And you took it one trip and you just threw them on there. And if I remember right, looking at the closet, they were a little to the right, but all of them were because you took it in one hand and then put it on there. So I remembered all that.
And the thing about the shoes, like, I parked that luggage trolley in the middle of the floor.
Yeah.
And I left the shoes there, and those shoes were where that trolley was parked. Like,
yeah, the trolley didn't move them. We didn't kick them or anything. It was off to the side. It wasn't like right in the middle of a path. You could you weren't gonna completely trip over them, or my OCD would have kicked in and grabbed them. But we were also in a hurry to meet them up top.
They were already partying.
Yeah.
So,
and by God, they ain't gonna party without us.
That's right. So I tell you that story, and then everybody comes back, and I can't believe it. And of course, the skeptic in me is like, if I were hearing somebody else tell this story, it's well, you went there by yourself, and that's when you staged this stuff. Like, yeah, obviously, but I didn't do that.
I don't think you'd have a reason to. Well, kind of. I mean, I don't think you did.
Yeah. So, I mean, I brought everybody into the room, and I'm just flabbergasted. Maybe we'll post the picture. It is a good picture of me, I think. But I mean, you can tell in my face that I'm just like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And the next morning, I remember going down and be like, okay, guys, like, how often do you go into the rooms and mess with the stuff? And they're like,
oh, yeah,
and
I remember
said,
you. Yeah.
What happened? And so I told them, and they were like, no, that happens in that room all the time. Things like that happen all the time in that room. And I'm just standing there like, and nothing else happened the whole time we were there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Nothing happened on our end either. Yeah, I don't remember anything. No, it's one of those you want some, like, me personally, it's just, it'd be cool, like, deep down you're like, man, I'm in a known, like,
active
place, and so everybody that goes to stay there is kind of, like, in that mindset of, like, desperately searching for photo evidence or something.
Yeah.
I mean, on their page, people are constantly posting pictures of what they think are ghosts and apparitions and stuff. And, you know, it's a lot of times people are reaching.
Yeah.
Well, maybe most of the time. But
what I think is interesting about those ghost tours is they encourage you to take pictures. And I was like, well, of course they do. And if they're taking pictures with flash, you're going to catch the dust motes, and that's going to look like orbs in your photos.
yeah.
But they specifically say, turn your flash off. And I was like, okay, that's intriguing. I like that.
We stayed one night at the Stanley, and Harlan made the comment that there's a lot of mirrors in here.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started thinking back to the Crescent, they always have a mirror at the end of each hallway.
Yeah.
And so I do think the hotel kind of plays on they want to keep their reputation and
of course.
kind of put stuff
Yeah.
in it. Now, do I think that they go all out and go into people's rooms? No, I don't think that
I don't
happens.
think they do
I don't.
either.
I really don't. They are also, they know that they're known for that, but they also are professional and it is a business that they're running as well, so they don't, it's not like they're,
and that's one of those things, Theodora's room where we were staying, you go by that ghost tour and it's like, we have the key right here, do we want to go in? And it's like, no, because of insurance reasons, we can't go in there, and we can't even let you open the door, so it's like, I'm sure they want to, there are just some things they can't.
I do remember. So they may have changed those rules probably for reasons like they say.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember one of the first times I went to the Crescent.
Oh, you have a photograph from that room.
I have a photo from that room. And the reason I have that photo from that room is because the ghost tour I was on, there was a couple that were staying in that room.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, we'll let you in. You can come in. And we all came in, and the tour guide was standing in the bedroom portion of it, and we were all just looking in towards that way. And in front of us is the closet that you're talking about, and it was open. And I can't remember, was it just open all the time? I can't remember I don't think it had a door. I think it was open.
It had a door when we were there.
Okay,
but it didn't.
But it was
close
open.
very well.
It was open at that time because I got photo evidence of that. But
it's very clear the door is open in the photo.
But yeah, so they told the story of that room in the room, so that was pretty cool. And I took a few pictures. People were taking pictures and stuff, and the people that were staying in it, they had just got there, so they didn't have anything like unpacked and stuff. And so they were like, we asked if we could take photos first. You don't want to take pictures of people's personal items and stuff like that. But they were a really cool couple. They were just like, they were there to hunt some ghosts.
Yeah.
Because they had all kinds of film equipment, tripods, cameras set up. Dude, I was like, I'm just going to presume it was ghost hunting.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own thing, though.
Yeah. No judgment.
But, yeah, so that time that we stayed,
those rooms are not
really
soundproof.
No.
You don't want to be doing too much of that.
No. For people that have never been there, this is a historical hotel. Recognized by the Historical Society.
Yeah.
And as far as I understand, for you to keep that, it has to be as close to the original as possible.
Yeah.
It can be updated as far as
safety-wise, it has to be.
Safety-wise, and then also, modern usage of outlets and stuff like that. But for the most part, like the wood, the pan, they have to keep it to period or as close to. So a lot of the doors in that place
gaps.
There's huge gaps, uneven gaps in the doors. So that may play into a lot of people's experiences and stuff.
The floor is uneven. There are unsettling parts
Creaks,
just because it's perfect.
If you go, just keep all that in mind. So you're not
going to a resort. You are going for an experience.
Yeah. But I didn't have an experience that time. I had been there one time prior to, and I remember in the middle of the night being woke up by something that felt like somebody was jumping on the bed. I looked over at my partner, and they were sound asleep. So, and this was like jump, and I was, and I remember waking up, and that was the first thing I did was look over at them and was like about to say, "What the hell?" I'm trying to sleep here, but they were sound asleep, and then I was also like, "How are they sound asleep when that happened?" So I kind of wrote it off like, oh, you know, it was just like maybe in that stage of sleep where you're kind of dreaming but not dreaming.
Yes.
So I end up falling back asleep, and then I have the craziest dream.
Yeah.
I dreamed that we were in that room,
Mm-hmm.
and I was laying in bed like I was, and I remember this lady was in our room pacing around frantically and talking to herself, but I can't remember what she was saying, but she was just frantically walking around the room, talking to herself, and she sits down on the edge of the bed and then looks at me and starts laughing, like hysterically laughing. And then all of a sudden she's throwing things at me, like dishes, and like where the dishes come from, I have no idea, but she's throwing stuff at me all while laughing hysterically.
Wow.
And I remember waking up, and obviously nobody was there.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the strangest nights I've ever had staying at the Crescent. And I chalk it up to be just, I was in a dream state. And when I was woke up by the jumping on the bed was more just me coming out of a dream, you know.
Yeah.
I really don't think that was, but it was just, that's just wild. And where that dream came from, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Now I have weird dreams. Dreams aren't cohesive for me.
Sure.
Some people dream and they can tell you it's like everyday life.
Yeah.
And there's nothing real crazy about it. But then there's people that don't dream at all, which is insane to me.
Yeah.
Like I can't wrap my mind around not dreaming. And so I dream all the time, but my dreams are like bits and pieces. And maybe that's just what I remember from, because half the time I can't remember what I dreamed about.
Yeah.
I just know I dreamed. So I have weird dreams every once in a while, but that one was probably on my top list of weird dreams. And it just happened to be at the Crescent. So that's kind of my really only experience that I would say that I had at the Crescent.
And we should probably say that picture of us, if you look at our Instagram, you and me, you with your cigar, me with my pipe, that's at the Crescent for your wedding.
On the balcony of the governor's suite.
Yeah.
And we will be back.
Yep.
I was so excited when I'm kind of a rule follower, and I don't like to be in trouble.
Yep.
And Amber is kind of the opposite of that. But Amber knew I was really worried about smoking my cigar outside. And I figured, because most places nowadays do not allow it, even on the grounds of the hotel. And when I had read the rules on their website, it kind of says that, you know, obviously you can't smoke inside. Crack it open. I remember Amber was like, she knew that I wanted to smoke cigars so badly. And so she went to the front desk and asked them, and they were like, oh yeah, it's fine. You can smoke on the balcony. And so I just remember being like super pumped. I was like, she came back to the room. Now she could have been lying, now that I think of it. She may have been lying. But we did it, and nobody told on us, and we did well out there. We smoked many cigars out there.
I think it may be because there's a bar on premises they can get away with.
Yeah, maybe so. Well,
But
I remember people walking outside the back, you know, watching them from the balcony. I remember people smoking
They had
cigarettes and
smokers
stuff.
outposts out there. Yeah.
But that was a heck of a time.
I mean, admittedly, the Ozarks and that place, I mean, that's on motorcycle routes and stuff like that.
Oh,
like
yeah, they got a big,
It is popular for people who are on scenic drives. As far as other notable experiences that I have had, I have had poor vision, so I'm one of those people who see things all the time or think I see things. Lately, the things that have been happening are I'll be watching TV in my living room, and Susan will walk up beside me, and I'll just think, oh, well, she's stopped to watch whatever this part of the show is, and she's interested. And without looking, I'll ask her a question, and she won't respond. And so when I go to look, there's nobody there. But it's like, somebody just walked up next to me. Like, I know that happened. And that happens all the time for me. But, it's just, I don't know, something my mind is doing, my imagination is doing, or something. Or I don't know. I've got...
Or could be...
Could be something.
Could be.
Yep, could be
Don't
something
know.
else. Yep. I am open to the possibilities. What about you? Other notable experiences?
I think the most notable was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I had a reoccurring dream for the longest time, for several years actually. When I was growing up, like I'd said previously, my room was at the very beginning of the hallway, like I was the first room. But for example, my mom would be like, "Hey, can you run in my room and get this?" And I remember just being really afraid of our hallway. Our hallway wasn't very long, but it didn't have good lighting in the hallway. It never has. Her bedroom was at the very end of the hallway. I would walk down there, and it could be during the day or it could be at night, but it didn't matter. But I would walk back there, get what she wanted, and then I would turn off the bedroom light, and I would start walking down the hallway, and I'd feel something, like I just felt it. And so I would take off running down the hallway and come in there. And my mom was always like, you're crazy. There's nothing back there, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, I never knew or imagined what it was. I just knew that I felt something behind me and I didn't want to be there. And so when I look back, I'm like, okay, that's just typical kid stuff because, you're afraid of the dark or you're just, you're playing tricks in your mind, what is it? I would have a reoccurring dream of the same situation. But in my dream, I would look back and it would be complete darkness. Like you couldn't make out the walls. You couldn't make out the end of the hallway. There was cabinets at the end of the hallway. Couldn't see the cabinets. Just pitch dark. And it would be this black fog would be rolling towards me, chasing me down this hallway. And there were several eyes of just different creature eyes, and you couldn't see the creature, you just saw the eyes, and there was no noise being made. It was just this black rolling fog and these eyes coming towards me. And I had that dream for several years, even to where I was in my early teens. Like I had that dream, and then at some point, it just went away. And I haven't had that dream since, but tonight
Probably
I will
now.
because we're talking about it. But I do remember, I know that was a dream. But even to this day, when I go to my parents' house, they live in the same house. When I go to one of those back rooms or come out of the bathroom, which is midway down the hallway, I still get that feeling.
Yeah.
Even as an adult, I know nothing's back there. I still just get that feeling. And my parents, they're all about light. Like, they love daylight. So they have all the windows open. So the house is lit up pretty good. And like I said, the hallway's never been lit up very well. But when they have all the doors open to the bedrooms and the lights coming in, it's like, it's lit up. You can see. But I still get the feeling.
Yeah.
I still get that feeling. That was an experience. And then I had 2 other ghost experiences that I call ghost experiences, but
did we ever say what you caught on the photograph when you were in Theodora's room?
At the Crescent, it's left up to the viewer if they want to.
What do you see?
What they see, but I see a little boy.
Yeah.
In the closet, but I don't know. I've tried to zoom in on it and look at it and remember what was there and see, maybe it's just the way the camera is and stuff. There's just so many variables. Yeah. And that's why I think everybody has a hard time.
Yeah, of course.
And even if we do really have something, is anybody going to believe it?
Yeah.
Like most people.
Well, no.
See, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So that's why I've never put it out there publicly or anything.
Right.
Like, you guys know about it. I've showed it to a few people, but it is what it is, and take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it is, but,
Yeah.
I had one time that we were down in Broken Bow. My family lived down there. We were out in the field, and it was high brush. There was these truck paths, and we were walking down one of those truck paths, and I remember my cousin who we were staying with, he was an older guy. He was just telling different stories about you know, not ghost stories, just talk. And he was talking with my dad, and I was walking behind them, and I remember we came to a crossroads where there was truck path going this way and this way, you know, a cross path. And we were walking, and I remember looking to my left, looking down a path, and seeing two kids. And they were holding hands, and they were walking away from us. And they never looked back, and they weren't making noise. And I just remember seeing them. I remember telling my dad, I was all like, who are those kids, you know, because I was a little younger and stuff. And they had turned and stopped and looked down there, and they didn't see anything. And my cousin was like, yeah, there's no way on this land, you know, it was the private land, there shouldn't be kids out here, you know, whatever. So they didn't really take me too serious. But I saw those kids. And I feel like whether they were just real kids that had been on the private, it's not like you can't get on land,
of course.
you know, but it was weird that they were in, like, the boy was wearing overalls. I remember that. And the little girl was wearing some kind of little sundress type deal. But they were holding hands. They were younger, and they were walking away. And even with us being close enough to where you can hear us talking, they never looked back. They just kept walking. So that was kind of a weird experience for me.
How old were you at that point?
I was probably 10 at that time. Yep. So I just always think back to that moment like, did I see something? Or did I just see two kids that happened to be out and about? So, but really throughout my years, those were probably notable experiences. Recently, the most recent one, we were on this ghost hunting thing, and I actually wasn't supposed to go because I don't really care for that stuff, but my wife does, and my wife and daughter were supposed to go, but my daughter backed out to do something cooler with her friends. And so I went.
What could be cooler than a ghost hunt?
Yeah. And so I went. We have a mansion that was a governor's mansion. And when we got to the governor's mansion, we were staying in the parlor room. And there was just a small group of us. And then we had the two ghost hunters. And they set up all their equipment. And they were doing their ghost hunter thing. And everybody's just kind of in a circle, you know, sitting in chairs. And I was sitting on the floor in between, like kind of like in one of those big, it wasn't a door, but the framework of going into the next room. And so I was sitting there.
A liminal space.
So, yes. Exactly. They were doing their ghost hunting thing. And while they were doing that, I just remember that because it was getting late and I was kind of tired. And so I'm just kind of sitting there and just, you know, taking in what they're doing.
Probably being a little pouty and negative Nancy over there.
Actually, I wasn't. I was just tired. But I'm very, with ghost hunters, that's when I think I turn on very skeptical. Like, in my head, I get kind of snooty, and I'm like, whatever, dude. You don't know how to catch spirits. You don't know, like,
it's
your
their confidence.
Stupid little machinery. Anyways, yeah. I'm not gonna get into that, but but I was sitting there, and I'm just like,
I mean, we'll play with those machines
taking in what they're doing. Yeah, I know, but it's just I'm just taking in what they're doing and stuff, and all of a sudden, I just get this like huge draft of cold air on my back, and it sends chills up my spine, and I'm just like, it was just one of those moments like you're like, where did the draft come from?
Yeah,
because we're in a house not near windows, nothing's open, there's no air conditioning in this mansion. I remember that just burst of cold air on my back, and then it was gone. Came in, and then it was gone. And no one else reacted. And there was like a guy, one of the ghost hunters was standing by me, and he was like, he had his shoulder up against the framework. And the other lady, the ghost hunter, she was sitting on a couch further in the room, and everybody else was in the room. I was really the only one that was kind of other than him standing there. And nobody reacted. And it was cold. Yeah. Like, so I'm thinking, what was that? I remember just being like, trying to process it. And the guy happened to, like, I guess notice and look down at me and was like, are you is something? Did you hear something?" And I was like, "I didn't hear anything, but I felt a cold blast." And he goes, "That's weird," because he didn't feel it.
Yeah.
So, anyways, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was my
Yeah.
experience in the little ghost hunting group that we went on that one time.
Mm-hmm.
Thought that was pretty neat.
We intend to talk to some people who've had some experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Hope to get them on the show.
It's kind of a little bit of the goal of when we started this podcast, and what we kind of moving forward. We would love to hear people's experiences.
Yeah.
It does not have to be ghost related. It's anything, any kind of experience that moved you.
If you saw Bigfoot in your backyard,
Yeah, we want to hear about it.
yeah. If you're seeing aliens, missing time.
Yeah, we have an email, and if you're interested in sharing your story, whether it be through writing or through interview style, obviously our interviewing stuff would have to be local, but anyways, not necessarily.
producer is pointing out we could do-
I'm not flying anywhere. Those inquire if you're if you're interested, through the prairie smoke at gmail.com. Send us your stories or send us your interest.
We've got a little forum, and we don't know what we're getting into here, so it may take us a long time, or you may be the only one talking to us. We just don't know.
All right, but we're gonna
See where it takes
interested.
us.
So, yep.
And we should also take this time to point out, we're not ghost hunters. We're not looking for reasons of why you are experiencing what you are experiencing. We are interested in your stories and how it has affected you.
Yeah.
But we can't exorcise any demons or catch any ghosts.
We are on some big platforms.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
many
kids.
ways to listen to us and bring us into your home, your car, and into your ears. And we appreciate all of our listeners.
Yep. Thanks for the feedback.
Feedback's great.
Yep.
We'll always take feedback.
Yeah. You brought up that whole being in your ears, us being in your ears, like you're wearing headphones, listening to us. But I know you know this. I had an imaginary friend for a long time when I was little, and he was very small, and sometimes he would ride in my ear. So I have a very literal interpretation of being in your ear.
Okay. I mean, I knew about the friend. I didn't know about him riding in your ear, but that's cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So, do you hear that, guys? It's rain. It's beautiful.
Well, I hope this has been entertaining, because I don't think it's been very informative. It's fun to talk about this stuff.
Yep. If you enjoyed listening to this, email us. Let us know what your likes of the show, or what you take from shows and what you'd like to hear more of. Just let us know. We're not limited to one style, but we have one goal, and that's to hear experiences.
Yep. Tell some stories.
We're here for it. You hear that? That's not artificial.
No.
This is real.
Yeah, that's the rain pouring down right before we kick Dustin out of our house.
Yeah. I gotta walk out in that. It's like something new. Thought it would be funny.
Yep. All right, well.
It's like those cartoon rain clouds.
Mm-hmm.
It's just gonna follow me all the way to my car.
Yeah. Well, it's been great. Smoked a couple of bowls here.
Yep.
Smoked a couple of cigars.
Yep. Had the old Johnny Tobacco Knot, and it was beautiful as usual. And then I ended it with Diesel Fool's Errand, I think is what it's called. So that was good. Pleasant. As usual. Great conversation.
Yep. Play us out.